The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Sunday, December the 28th, 2025. We hope you had a fabulous Christmas time off. Mary, and hopefully you did as well.
I certainly did.
So we're going to carry on in the same vein as we've been doing all week. We're going to be showing you these exclusive moments and times at the Children's Health Defense Conference. So Mary, what have we got today?
So today, Polly, we're showing two lectures that were on the second day of our conference. The first one by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Why isn't Tony Fauci in prison? And the reason that he gave this talk is he had given that before. And it's really important, you know, what he was such an important figure. And he says in this lecture that you'll listen to that he is trying to get Dr. Fauci into Congress to testify. He's trying to do that on a voluntary basis. But he really traces for us his book called Deception about where the COVID virus actually probably comes from laboratories in China. And it's just a fascinating lecture that I think you'll really enjoy. After that one, we'll also have a second lecture that immediately followed at the conference from Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. And his is Uncovering the Truth, the Lonely Search in the Senate. So there's really nobody in Congress more than Senator Johnson, who's really trying to get to the bottom of what happened with the COVID countermeasures, including the vaccines. What were the injuries? What did we know? When did we know it? Why didn't we change course more quickly? And he's since then really started to focus, Polly, on the childhood vaccine schedule, as you know, and you and Dr. Hooker both testified in his hearing voices of the vaccine injured. And his comments there are really about how, among other things, about how deeply he feels a sense of obligation and compassion for the people who've been injured by vaccines and who have been unacknowledged for so long. So they're both really fantastic speeches by two very important senators in the health freedom movement. And I really urge you to watch them. I think they're well worth watching.
Yeah, well, they're coming up now. So we hope you enjoy watching those two right now. But for Mary and I, we'll see you soon.
Sorry I'm not there in person, but shutdown politics have forced me to stay in D.C. this weekend. I want to thank Children's Health Defense for the invitation, though, and for all your hard work. The COVID pandemic had many villains and a few heroes. One of these heroes was Li Wenliang. For a contrarian like me, it's hard not to idolize Li. He was a young ophthalmologist, just as I once was, full of youth, unapologetic, and a force for truth, even living in the midst of communist China, where citizens are serenaded by drones, hovering outside the balconies of their high-rise apartments, singing the true state anthem, "Control your soul's desire to be free." Li gave his life for taking care of COVID patients and trying to warn the world of the impending pandemic. Meanwhile, American government scientists essentially spit on his grave as they buried the truth to cover their asses. At every turn, Anthony Fauci has worked to obscure any connections between the NIH-funded Wuhan lab and COVID-19. Did Li know that his postings on Weibo chat about an unknown SARS-like virus that was killing people in Wuhan would essentially be his last words? How was this hero, this truth teller, treated by the communist Chinese? He was summoned and reprimanded for spreading rumors and severely disturbing the social order. Li was forced to sign a confession. Realized that he was accused of spreading misinformation, the same sort of accusations that would soon be leveled in the land of the free. I should know. They made these same accusations against me. Major media platforms such as Facebook labeled anyone who suggested that COVID could have originated in the Wuhan lab. They branded us as purveyors of this so-called misinformation. The term would become the watchword of the American left, desperate to control the narrative by silencing those who questioned it. According to the official Chinese narrative, Li died from COVID. He was only 33 years old. The death rate from COVID or with COVID in the United States for adults between the ages of 30 and 39 is about 0.04%, quite rare. Likely, that rate is even lower if patients with significant comorbidities are excluded. Li's death was a great loss, but also a rare occurrence in his age bracket, extraordinarily rare. In an authoritarian society, such deaths linger and lead to whispers regarding the veracity of official causes of death. When his death was posted online sometime after midnight, the comments on Weibo quickly came in. "I knew you would post this in the middle of the night. You think we've all gone to sleep. No, we haven't." Another commenter posted that countless young people will mature overnight. After today, the world is not as beautiful as we imagined. Are you angry? If any of us here is fortunate enough to speak up for the public in the future, please make sure you remember tonight's anger. The wistful responses of Chinese youth to the loss of one of their own generation reminds me of Parveen Shakir and a poem she wrote. They insist upon catching the firefly in the daylight. The children of our age have grown wiser. It is yet to be determined whether a new generation of Chinese youth will rise up, remembering the hope that came when Deng Xiaoping dismantled Mao's brutal shackles. Will a new generation channel the despair of Tiananmen Square to forge a new China, a China whose government does not threaten to one day unleash upon the world, either by accident or by intent, a biological scourge that civilization might struggle to survive? With Li's untimely passing, even China's National Supervisory Commission and Anti-Corruption Department of Government chimed in saying they would investigate Li's death in response to issues raised by the masses. As CNN reported, the short statement did not elaborate on the nature of the issues raised. Li Wenliang was a hero, and I want to thank heroes like Li and all others who resist censorship in the hope that the DNA of resistance and independent thought will never be stamped out by government censors. As Li lay dying, the news of the mysterious and deadly virus spread. One could only imagine the flop sweat that must have soaked through Shi Zhengli's clothing as she paced her office in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Known worldwide as the bat scientist, Dr. Shi trembled at the thought that a worldwide pandemic may have originated in her lab. News that 3 of her colleagues were seriously ill with a pneumonia of unknown origin sent shockwaves throughout the Wuhan Institute for Virology. Yet in communist China, one's first worry isn't always about the truth, but how the party reacts to the truth. She had to act quickly if she were to survive. She knew there was no tolerance for criticism. She'd seen what happened to colleagues, such as her colleague Wang Yangling, who didn't toe the party line. She didn't yet know that Wang would ultimately go missing, but she wasn't naive. Even though she was famous as a bat scientist, she hadn't reached this pinnacle of success in the Chinese research world without understanding that the Communist Party roadblocks that could stymie anyone's ascent to leadership were real, and that any misstep might be her last. Dr. Shi's accomplishments were legion, from her field expeditions to remote caves, to her collection and identification of over 100 new coronaviruses, to her collaboration with famous American scientists. She knew she was a star in government circles, but she also understood that no one in China is ever truly safe. Everyone is ultimately expendable, and the trick was staying ahead of the curve, avoiding the hangman's axe. Her lab was now under direct military control. Not that her lab had ever been not under the military's watchful eye. It might help her survive, though, if the new military command understood that she'd just been following orders. It might help her survive if she reminded everyone that she listened to and obeyed the direct orders of military scientist General Zhou Yusen. She simply provided him with the samples of the mutant virus. He promised a general vaccine for all coronaviruses. General Zhou insisted that the virus must have significant ability to infect humans. The coronavirus needed to have a special site to allow it to enter human cells. She could do all this. She was a master of genetic manipulation. She had even submitted an application for a U.S. defense grant to do precisely that. She didn't yet know that the virus from her lab would kill millions, but she did hope that the world would one day judge her based on her desire to save lives. As for her personal survival, she pinned her hopes on the "I was just following orders" defense. General Zhou was really the one in charge. He was the official military, for goodness sakes. Surely he would absorb the blame or take the fall. Dr. Shi would not know until the spring of that year that General Zhou would not survive the year, that he literally would take the fall. Was he killed because the leaked virus killed millions of Chinese? Or did he commit suicide because the vaccine he developed was not really that effective? Dr. Shi didn't know that General Zhou's fate, what it was to be, or that he was to fall in an unexplained way from a tall building. All Dr. Shi knew at the time was that mistakes were not tolerated, that errors of this magnitude were terminal, and she knew that survival depended not only on her demonstrating her usefulness, but also showing her party loyalty, expertly covering up the traces of the virus's true origin. But now it was a race against time. All evidence of the virus so carefully cultivated in her lab must be eliminated, not just to destroy the evidence, but to protect any other lab workers from dying. Once the danger abated enough for her to think, she knew that the next step was to prevent the world from knowing that the virus originated in her lab. So late one night in September 2019, on a muggy day with midday temperatures exceeding 90 degrees, Dr. Shi destroyed the online coronavirus database that she had so painstakingly compiled over the years. Much of that research was financed by the U.S. taxpayer. The cover-up had begun. And it was only September 2019. The rest of the world would have to wait until January 2020 to learn of the COVID pandemic. And even then, the Chinese government would begin by swearing that the virus did not transmit human to human. So many lies. Not just the lies of the Chinese government, even our own government lied. And lied even more as it tried to hide every bit of evidence of U.S. government funding of dangerous coronavirus gain-of-function experiments in Wuhan. The great COVID cover-up began in China. No one should be surprised that a totalitarian government would seek to hide any responsibility for a worldwide pandemic. But it was mind-jarring to witness the cover-up that took place in our own country, supposedly the land of the free. Fauci and his yes men might have gotten away with it if a federal judge hadn't ordered their emails released, revealing that virtually all of Fauci's colleagues, including himself, initially believed that COVID originated with a lab leak. The email showed in real time these very same scientists publicly disavowing the lab theory, while privately concluding that in all likelihood, the virus did originate from the lab. So on the one hand, they're saying it came from the lab, and then publicly they're saying, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you say this. Something weird, something strange, and something dishonest was going on. To those who disdain the moniker deep state, they fail to understand the nature of the epithet. It's not an accusation of evil men sitting in the dark, rubbing their hands together with glee and plotting to devastate the world by releasing a supervirus. The truth is much more mundane. George Carlin put it well when he said, "You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge." Why are 8 federal agencies right now, to this day, resisting my records releases? Why are they resisting giving us the truth? Why are so many in league? That the deep state actually is a good description. It describes it well. It's precisely that their interests converge. Any agency that funded the gain-of-function research in Wuhan or in the United States or anywhere in the world now denies that the research was gain-of-function. And they fight tenaciously to keep any record that they funded this dangerous research from the public eye. So fierce is their will that they have refused to divulge records even when I've enlisted 25 fellow senators to sign the records request. It's only now that Robert F. Kennedy is in charge of the HHS that we're finally getting to the bottom of this. And we can all thank Bobby Kennedy for keeping his word and revealing these records. The deep state is simply an alignment of interest. It's a bunch of bureaucrats that through the federal government come together to cover up responsibility because they know they funded the research that in all likelihood led to a lab leak that killed millions. When I challenged Anthony Fauci in committee, he angrily and vehemently denied funding any gain-of-function research. When I asked Fauci again at a subsequent hearing, Dr. Fauci, knowing that it's a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research? Fauci, in a transparent attempt to change the subject, abruptly pivoted to the shrill accusation that I was somehow responsible for death threats against him. Well, as you all know, Fauci was ultimately pardoned by President Biden's auto pen. How convenient. In his last hours in office, President Joe Biden granted Fauci a preemptive pardon, something unprecedented in modern American politics, that gave him blanket immunity for any crimes committed going all the way back to January 2014. Fauci accepted the pardon and insisted that he had committed no crime and there are no possible grounds for any allegation or threat of criminal investigation or prosecution of me. What a curious response. So why the pardon? If he committed no crime, why would he accept the pardon? To Fauci and his gaggle of sycophants, public health was not about advice, but about submission. And above all, do not question. To question, to do so risks social condemnation as a racist, a denier of the latest approved belief, or an anti-vaxxer or an anti-masker. Once branded as such, you could lose not just friends and family, but your job. Your bank could cancel you. Best to remain silent. Listen to the experts. Believe the science. And as Anthony Fauci famously told you, I am the science. How did Anthony Fauci, lifelong government bureaucrat, become the science? As Jean Giraudoux is quoted as saying, the secret of success is sincerity. Once you can fake that, you've got it made. No one person more represents that than Anthony Fauci. Likely no other government official, elected representative included, could fake sincerity like Anthony Fauci. Will investigators finally uncover from purposeful lost databases the real precursor to COVID-19? Time will tell, but I haven't given up on this, and we are daily searching thousands and thousands of records looking for answers. From what we know of the COVID cover-up, though, the evidence is clear that Fauci and others worked together to obscure and distort the truth. The Chinese government orchestrated its own cover-up. Multiple U.S. government agencies to this day continue to hide evidence that they funded dangerous research in Wuhan. I believe that history will judge them harshly. In the end, one must imagine Fauci and others all believe they got away with it, but still, late at night, even the guilty must become anxious, rerunning the scenarios through their minds, wondering, latching on to lingering doubts and worrying. Did their actions lead to the largest man-made plague in human history? Are the millions dead the result of their experiments to increase the pathogenicity of deadly viruses? History will judge. But the facts as we know them paint a sordid tale of dishonesty, misjudgment, and ultimately hubris, the likes of which the world has rarely seen.
Senator Paul, thank you so much for that outstanding presentation. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be with you. I'm sorry it has to be remote, but I'm glad to be with you and happy to answer any questions or engage in any conversation.
Super. So if you could start, maybe tell us what's going on in D.C. that disabled you from coming down to Austin. We know you're in negotiations, and maybe you can give us a little insight.
There is this little thing called the shutdown. It's been going on now longer than we've ever had a shutdown, and we're trying to find some kind of compromise. There are two different spending proposals that are out there. There's a Republican spending proposal that borrows $2 trillion next year, and there's a Democrat spending proposal that would borrow $3 trillion. I frankly think both of them borrow too much and that we should have a third alternative. So I've proposed something called the penny plan, which would cut about 6% of spending every year for 5 years in order to balance the budget. What I like about it is it does it across the board. It doesn't take 100% of anything that people want, but it takes enough across the board to be able to balance a budget. The more debt we add, the more inflation we add. Over the last 5 years, we've had about 25% inflation. And so that means if your salary hasn't gone up 25%, you've gotten poorer in the last 5 years. It continues on. It slowed down a little bit with this administration, but we still have inflation. And in order to fix that, we have to do something about the debt.
Do you see the likelihood of some kind of negotiated settlement soon?
I'm hoping we get something today. The bottom line is that the Democrats who are voting against the Republican proposal all voted for that proposal last December. So in December of last year, they put forward a spending plan, and everybody referred to it as the Biden spending levels. Republicans weren't for it at that time, and the Democrats were for it. Fast forward to now, it's the exact same spending plan from December of last year, and all the Democrats are opposed to it. So they don't really have a good reason for why they're opposed to it. I have my own reasons for being opposed to both, but the Democrats have no good reason for it because they voted for this previously. So their stated reason is they want Obamacare subsidies. Now, people need to realize that there were Obamacare subsidies in the beginning that were primarily targeted to people under $100,000 a year. In 2023, they created new Obamacare subsidies on top of the Obamacare subsidies, and these go up to $600,000 a year. Most people I talk to in Kentucky think that if you make $225,000 a year, you shouldn't be getting $1,500 from the government. If you make $100,000 a year, you get $13,000 from the government. The other thing is it hasn't worked. We give this money to people, and it's all printed and borrowed, but then they give it to the insurance company, and the insurance company hikes the premiums. So the premium curve is going through the roof, and we keep giving people more and more money to chase the premiums, but the premiums go up. So I've offered a plan to let everybody buy their insurance wherever they want. So you could buy it from Costco, Amazon, Sam's Club, and when millions of people form a collective to bargain for their insurance, we'll drive the prices down. If you don't do something like that and you just keep subsidizing it, I think the problem just keeps getting worse.
But you do see light at the end of the tunnel, that there may be a deal soon?
Yeah, there is going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and it needs to open. I've voted twice in the last week for Ron Johnson's proposal, and I think he's going to be on next. His proposal is to pay the workers. And I'm for that. I'm for paying the soldiers, pay the workers. That's the thing we should be doing. And his proposal also fixes it. So from here on forward, if we have another dispute in 6 months and government closes down, the workers would automatically be paid. So it's an automatic plan that at least keeps open the salary portion of it. You know, I fly a couple times a week. I'm not too excited about my air traffic controller not being paid. So I'd say we should pay them all.
Thank you so much, Senator. Common sense. So let's turn to your presentation. First of all, we're so happy that all of the people here received a copy of your book, Deception, that deals with much of what you said. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So you talk about it all starting in China and starting in September, and I don't think that's public knowledge. Do you believe that that narrative has been censored so far in the United States?
It's out there, but it hasn't been expressed or covered by the mainstream news. Some of it was out there when the Trump administration left office in January of 2020. They declassified the knowledge that 3 people in the lab in Wuhan got sick. Now, we know they got sick, and we know that they were sick with a pneumonia of unknown origin. we don't know for sure they had COVID, and the Chinese denied that they had COVID. There is one way you can prove this. There is a type of X-ray that shows opacities throughout the lung that are pathognomonic, meaning that they're so good that they actually name the disease. And for a while, before there was a test for COVID, they were diagnosing COVID or the disease they didn't yet have a name for. They were diagnosing it with X-rays. I'm certain these 3 people in the lab got an X-ray. If the Chinese wanted to be open and transparent, they could show us these X-rays. They also probably have their blood. Their blood could have been tested in January if they still had it to see if it had the COVID antibodies. So in all likelihood, we believe it started in a lab. We do know she destroyed the records. We actually know from public records that her lab was shut down for a whole week in September, October, and that there was no cell phone traffic. And this is a little scary, but this is public knowledge. You can apparently figure out anytime someone isn't present. So normally in the lab, there'd probably be 100, 150 phones on. And through public data, you can tell that those cell phones were scattered throughout the lab. And then for about a week in October, they were gone. We suspect that was some sort of massive cleaning to try to disinfect the place after they became concerned about these 3 people being sick. So this evidence is out there, but interestingly, despite this, you still have Anthony Fauci and his yes men still all pointing to the wet market and saying, oh, it must have come from the wet market, even though no animal, they tested 90,000 animals and none of them had COVID. So really there is no good evidence it came from animals, but a lot of evidence that it came from a lab.
So, Senator, I believe that you have asked Dr. Fauci to come and testify before the Senate this year. What's happened with that?
We're in negotiations, and the way it works, people are impatient. They say, why not just drag him in? We can subpoena him, and we will if we don't get a voluntary agreement. We've been negotiating for over a month now, and so fairly quickly they're going to have to agree to a date. If they don't agree to a date, we will subpoena him. But people have to also realize people who are subpoenaed can then challenge that in court, and it may take us a while. We have to win a court case to force him to testify. So your best chance is getting him to come in voluntarily. He has begun. We also have gotten records from HHS, the most important of which show him communicating with Francis Collins and others to destroy emails. It's against the law for anybody in the executive branch to destroy emails related to government. We also have him using private email servers, which he's not supposed to use for governmental purposes. So those 2 things alone, destroying records and encouraging others to destroy records, is against the law. The problem, of course, is he was pardoned by President Biden. So is President Biden's pardon valid? Is the auto pen a valid way to do it? Does President Biden remember all the people he pardoned? These are questions you could entertain in court, but we won't know whether it's valid unless he were taken to court. Now, a lot of people online get impatient, or maybe they just want to criticize me, but like, why isn't he in court? Why isn't he locked up? I don't have the ability to prosecute. I can't bring charges. I have recommended charges to the Department of Justice under Biden and again under Trump. I have recommended that they charge him with lying to Congress and with destroying records. But, you know, I can't make them do that. That I have recommended it. I have formally written up a recommendation, and I hope they will at some point do this. In the meantime, I think history is going to judge him harshly, and I want to make sure that we give him a chance to come in, but it draws attention to the fact because I don't want another Anthony Fauci to take the reins of government and fund this dangerous research ever.
Exactly. Yeah, hallelujah. Senator, the applause in the background. Tell us why you think the preemptive pardon went back to 2014 for Dr. Fauci.
Well, that's a good question. You know, there was a pause on gain-of-function research from 2014 to 2016. So they knew this was dangerous because somebody had taken in 2010, I believe, the avian flu, and they had mutated it to infect animals, getting it closer to infecting humans. They also knew that people had taken the influenza of 1918, the Spanish influenza, and had mutated it to be more infectious and had recreated the Spanish flu that killed 50 million people. So they were worried about this, and so there was a pause between 2014 and 16, no government research. But during that pause, we do know, and we have records, that Anthony Fauci gave exceptions. And the exceptions were based on his signature, and the exceptions were often in foreign countries. We think some of this went on in China, and the reason to do it in China is that Americans might be upset that it would be done at home. The problem about farming out dangerous research, though, is viruses go worldwide. You know, it wasn't just people in Wuhan that died from this dangerous research. It spread, you know, within months or within weeks. It was in the United States, and then it was everywhere. And the extraordinary thing about COVID is that it was perfectly adapted to go human to human. Most animal viruses are sluggish in the beginning and have trouble going to human, and most of them never become good going human to human. The avian flu is a perfect example. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 reports of the avian flu infecting people this year, None of them died, but there was no human to human. You can get it from the chickens or you can get it from birds, wild birds as well. But then there was no human-to-human transmission because it's just not very good at infecting humans. And that's a good thing. That's why we, you know, hopefully keep away from most animal viruses. But it's also an indication that something was amiss with COVID because it transmitted so rapidly human to human that there's no way this came from nature and just did this unless it had been floating around for years. And there's no evidence that it had been floating around among humans for years. This thing came on abruptly in the fall of 2019, and I would say 100 different pieces of information point towards it coming from the lab.
How do we stop this bioweapons research that's happening worldwide at this point?
Well, the Trump administration has said no more gain-of-function research. Now, that's good, but it is in the eye of the beholder what is gain-of-function. So Anthony Fauci still maintains to this day, in I think a dishonest way, that the research in Wuhan was not gain-of-function. Now, in private emails that we have of him, he says, oh my goodness, we have to be worried about this because we know they do gain-of-function research. But he maintains it was never funded. So it gets down to what the definition of gain-of-function is, and so that's important. But the Trump administration is trying to do the right thing. Secretary Kennedy trying to do the right thing. They've banned it. One way of trying to make sure it doesn't happen going forward is I would actually like to have a commission called the Risky Research Commission appointed by the president that has scientists on it as well as national security people on it. And I give them the ability to look at any research, classified or unclassified. Part of the problem we have here is the classified, the intel agencies on our side, U.S. intel agencies, are very, very secretive. I think they are sometimes influenced by contractors who make lots of money doing this work, but they're very, very secretive such that they hide information from me and they hide information from most of Congress. There's only 8 members of Congress who are privy to most of the intelligence information. So I am worried that some of these intel agencies may still be doing gain-of-function research. So I think we need legislation. The other problem with the Trump executive order is when Trump is no longer president, should we get somebody in who has a different perspective, they just remove the executive order and we're back at risk. I think there is momentum, and it's taken a long time, that now is bipartisan. So my risky research bill, I've passed out of committee. I think it was either unanimous or I had 1 objection. I got the ranking Democrat to support it. I think the vote was 13-1. So that's an indication that we could get bipartisan legislation out. The other legislation I passed, I believe unanimously, was the idea that government scientists should reveal their royalties. We now have hundreds of millions, if not trillions of dollars in royalties flowing back to government. Not all to one scientist, but we have significant dollars going to each individual scientist, and they need to reveal that. I don't think you can be honestly or honorably on a vaccine committee if you won't reveal to us whether you get, royalties from Moderna or royalties from Pfizer. But this is the thing where Fauci was adamant and angry that he would never reveal it. And I vowed to him that one day I will make sure that the law forces you and all other scientists like you to reveal this, because it's unconscionable that you could be on a vaccine committee and not reveal that you're getting money from the vaccine maker.
Thank you. Absolutely. Senator, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to tell our audience here? We're 1,000 people missing you today.
Keep up the skepticism, keep up the argument. On vaccines, there are two things now that are well known, and these are, I think, not disputed by most people, but we still are making this error. And that is that newborns need a hepatitis B vaccine. It's absolutely false. If the mother does not have hepatitis B, there is no reason to give your newborn a hepatitis B vaccine. Same goes for COVID vaccine. There is no reason for your 6-month-old or your 16-year-old or probably your 26-year-old. You can make some arguments in the other category. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying it's absolute for children that the risk of the vaccine is greater than any supposed benefit. In fact, it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to prove a benefit for the COVID vaccine in these younger age groups. That argument we should not give up on, because ultimately we need to not be recommending. I think it is actually bad advice, malpractice to recommend the COVID vaccine for kids and for adolescents, because the risk of the vaccine is greater. There are other questions, and I know you guys have lots of different questions and things you're examining with vaccines, but these two things I know to be true, and I'm not going to let go of these until we actually change the vaccine schedule.
Thank you, Senator Paul, and we are grateful to you.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for Senator Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay!
Good morning, everybody.
Yay, Senator Johnson. You're getting a standing ovation here in your absence. There's been no bigger champion in the Senate or Congress than Senator Johnson here for the vaccine injured and for all of us getting to the truth. You can tell we're missing you here today, and you obviously need no introduction. Senator Johnson, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I really cannot tell you how truly disappointed I am not to be there. You know, I know how many heroes are attending this conference. I know how long so many of those heroes have struggled, and that there's so many things that we need to discuss in terms of path moving forward. So I wanted to be there this weekend to be able to discuss those things with you. But again, I appreciate this opportunity to be able to address this wonderful group of people via video. Mary suggested the title for my talk, Uncovering the Truth, The Lonely Search in the Senate. I don't want you feeling too sorry for me. There's plenty of people around here. I'm not lonely, okay? I am enormously frustrated. Now, the good news is the truth is out because of the tireless efforts of people like Mary and Polly and Brian and Dell and Aaron, and I could go on and on and on. The truth is out. And more people, particularly because of COVID, their eyes are being opened to the truth. And so we really have made an awful lot of progress. I mean, I'm always, obviously looking at all the problems out there. Sometimes we have to sit back and celebrate the success we've had. I mean, the fact that the uptake on the mRNA injections is so low, first of all, it's because so many people knew people injured by those injections. But also through efforts of people like involved in this children's health defense. So we're making progress. The greatest impediment to further progress literally is the basic human tendency never to admit you were wrong. And this is literally global. This is society-wide. It's not just the they that, the cartels, the corrupted federal health agencies, the corrupted large businesses. Nobody wants to admit they are wrong. People don't want to face the consequences of maybe rolling up their sleeves and getting that injection and thinking that maybe there's a turbo cancer in their future. So that's a significant challenge. But the state of denial is just pervasive. And probably the best way for me to describe kind of what's happening here in the Senate is just 3 quick stories. The first one just relates to last week. I held a hearing in the Permanent Subcommittee Investigations, not related to vaccines this time, but the title was Assessing the Damage Done by Obamacare. And we had 3 great witnesses for making our case, and they talked about the consolidation of the industry, the damage done to Medicaid, traditional Medicaid, disabled children being crowded out by single adults, the Medicaid expansion population. Then we talked about anybody on the exchanges who have seen just skyrocketing premiums. And at the tail end of that hearing, Senator Blumenthal, my ranking member, I think you guys are all aware of him, made the following statement. He said, I don't know anybody who's been harmed by Obamacare.
Oh my God.
I was incredulous. I pointed out their own witness, a wonderful mom from Madison, lost her coverage because of Obamacare, her employer coverage. She got dumped in the exchanges, had to pay $1,000 a month for a silver plan in 2016. They found that was too expensive, so by 2019, they switched to a bronze plan at $250 a month, but with a $14,000 deductible. Back when I was buying insurance, that was a catastrophic plan, and they were dirt cheap. That's an Obamacare plan. So they had medical expenses. They had to incur an $18,000 home equity line of credit. So their own witness was a victim, was suffering harm from Obamacare, and Richard Blumenthal stated he doesn't know anybody harmed. So now fast forward to a conversation I had with one of the Senate doctors. I'm not going to name this doctor, but this was probably in 2021 as I'm looking at my VAERS charts, and I'm seeing thousands of people dying. Early on, 46% were dying on the day of injection within 1 or 2 days. So I sat down with this doctor and said, do you understand how this mRNA technology works? And this individual said, well, not really. And so I described it. I talked about the lipid nanoparticles designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers. I talked about what mRNA was, what it did. Biodistributes all over the body. Attaches to a cell, injects the mRNA into that cell, turning that cell into a manufacturing site for something toxic to the body, which the body then attacks. At the conclusion of my little tutorial there, this doctor said, well, describe it that way, it's a little scary. So I offered, so listen, I can connect you with real experts, doctors that can talk doctor to doctor. Happy to do it. That individual has never reached out for that type of consultation. I have sent that individual, for example, the last one I think was a Midwestern doctor, a great Substack he had with all these videos of other people who questioned vaccines, never got a reply. So again, here's somebody, obviously, a card-carrying member of the medical establishment in a complete state of denial, does not want to see evidence of vaccine harms. Another very sad story, probably in 2022, after I'd gotten to know Brianne Dressen and all those other wonderful people who've been harmed by the COVID injection, developed the group React 19, I was really encouraging them to come into Washington, D.C. in force. Have all your injured individuals contact their House of Representative member, their senator, insist on a meeting with the actual congressional member. And I said, I've got to believe these people, when they hear the stories, will have sympathy and will have their eyes open. I am just very sad to report, when I met with that group later in the day, they were treated horrifically in many cases, just horrifically. And so the bottom line is, that is our problem. Nobody wants to admit they're wrong. Members of Congress, they were cutting videos, not quite as obnoxious as Stephen Colbert with the syringes dancing in the background, but encouraging all of their constituents, get that jab, let's end this pandemic. They're doing the same thing with childhood vaccines. Doctors that have recommended this, that have injected little babies, they don't want to admit something they've done caused autism. So this is a significant challenge. For my part, what I've been trying to do is I've been holding these hearings, and by the way, thank you to everybody who's participated in those. And let me sincerely apologize for the careers that have been destroyed because you had the courage and compassion to, first of all, treat COVID patients, but also come forward and talk against the orthodoxy. Tell people the truth. I know people have suffered grievously, so thank you for that. What you'll notice in the first 3 hearings, and I'll apologize again for not being able to hold them early enough because we weren't getting documents from HHS. But our first hearing was basically the corruption of science, corruption of the federal health agencies, and that's where we revealed the documents we had showing that the CDC, the health agencies absolutely had a signal for myocarditis, and they hid it. Our next hearing, I think, was probably the most powerful, voice of the vaccine. again, thank all of you, and God bless all of you for coming forward and telling your stories so other people's eyes can be opened. Our last hearing on vaccines was the revelation of the Henry Ford study with Aaron Siri and Toby Rogers and Dr. Jake Scott. Now, what a piece of work he was. But anyway, so that's what I've been trying to do. I want everybody here because I need your help. The theme of my hearings has always been to lay the informational foundation to get people to open up their eyes. And I think one of the most important things for people to understand is, no, these institutions are corrupt. People don't want to believe that. People don't want to believe that government's corrupt or that a federal health agency established to protect their health could actually be harming, could be working contrary to their health, captured by the very pharmaceutical industries that also people don't want to believe would produce products that would harm them. So again, we have to get people to understand that. So powerful anecdotal examples of that start opening people's eyes. I mean, that was what was so powerful about the movie Vaxxed. That is what is so powerful about the latest version, an inconvenient study. These are important efforts that, again, it's not moving as fast as any of us would like to, but it's opening people's eyes. So the types of hearings I want to hold in the future, and this is where I need your help. I had a great Zoom call with Dr. Paul, is it Paul Thomas, John Thomas?
Paul Thomas.
Again, encouraging me to hold a hearing on the destruction of medical careers.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I'd love to get Dr. Wakefield.
You got it.
If I could raise Semmelweis from the grave, I'd have him talk about what he suffered.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be one thing, but my staff right now is going through over 8 million pages. Bobby finally broke that log jam, and we got this massive data dump, and we're sorting through it. Understand, people who are committing wrong, okay, doing wrongdoings.
Yes.
Okay. I've got to be a little more
Yes,
moderate.
you're being very delicate. We appreciate that.
Okay. They know how to cover up.
Yeah.
It was my staff that uncovered that email from Dr. Moran saying, I've got this gal that can show you how to avoid FOIA. Okay.
Yeah.
So they know how to avoid this, but they can't totally cover their tracks, cover their trail. But so we're going through those documents. We're seeing some interesting things. No blockbusters yet. When we do, we'll hold a hearing on that. I truly want to hold a hearing on the hospital protocols that, in my mind, and I won't be delicate here, turned hospitals into killing fields during COVID.
Great.
I would love, and I forget the lawyer's name. I've met with him. I want to bring him in. This is a lawyer who
It's
started.
Warner, I think. Yeah. I think he's here.
I'm not talking Warner. This is a lawyer who advocated for families whose patients were captured, who were in hospitals. They couldn't free them. They were begging hospitals, please just try ivermectin, try these other, budesonide, try something else. And of course, the hospital said nope. So we started suing, and these are rough numbers. Of the 100 clients, 100 families that he succeeded, that he won, only one patient died. Of the 100,
Ralph Larigo. There you go.
Exactly. Of the 100 that he lost, they all died. Yeah. I mean, that is powerful anecdotal evidence. And then I actually want to expand this, because it's not just the corruption of the pharmaceutical companies, the capture and corruption of the federal health agencies that have impacted children through the vaccine schedule, or other people through the COVID injections. What about all the other molecules and therapies that work, that have been known to work for decades, that have been sabotaged and suppressed? I'm a big fan. I read A Midwestern Doctor. Okay, I've cured my own acid reflux by using betaine HCl. It works. Okay, I'm using DMSO. Chlorine dioxide. I wrote a little blurb for Derek Corey's book, the war on chlorine dioxide. I mean, all of these things. Dr. Buzinski, who created, and I don't understand,
Yep.
some peptide, okay, that Kessler tried to destroy. $60 million spent. I mean, you know where I'm going with this thing, okay?
Yeah.
So my limitation is I'm not a doctor. I'm an accountant. Okay, I mean, why was an accountant chairman of Homeland Security Governmental Affairs? Why was I holding hearings on treatment, on hydroxychloroquine, on ivermectin, on the vaccine injured? Why isn't the HELP committee doing that?
Right.
I mean,
you do know the answer. Yeah.
I mean, it's because of the capture. So again, I'm not done. Okay, I wish you could hold it every week.
Yay, Senator Johnson.
But we need excellent hearings. We need excellent witnesses. We need more faces. And I know that takes courage, but that's where I'm appealing to this group. That's why I wanted to discuss, why I could have been with you, is we need more people coming forward. I need ideas.
Okay.
Again, create the foundational information and groundwork.
Well, this group can help. Yeah.
More eyes being opened.
We are here as a community to help you, Senator Johnson, because you've helped us tremendously.
Well, again, thank all of you. God bless you. Hopefully I can come there next year.
Next time, yes. And if you would, the person who's now following you is Gavin DeBecker to talk about his book, Forbidden Facts, which I know you've read. Would you say a few words about that?
Well, read it. I've read the free sample download so far. I've been reading a bunch of other stuff as well. I'm definitely going to read that book because I'd love to have Gavin come and testify to it. I know it's going to be a fabulous book.
Awesome.
I texted him about it. So, I haven't read the whole thing, but I encourage everybody to do so. I will definitely read that book. Listen to him carefully.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Senator Johnson. Standing ovation here.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.